Hello. It's Malik, your financial emancipator. So I wanted to do a video with you guys today and talk a little bit about something I've been thinking about it. It's like a it's basically one of the tenets, one of the main things that have to do with financial emancipation as I see it. So if you haven't gone back and listened to my podcast, the episode 2 through 6 goes over the 5 ways that you can walk towards your financial emancipation. So head on over to iTunes and SoundCloud, listen to the episodes 2 through 6. Really goes over the 5 ways you walk towards your financial emancipation. And those episodes I kind of specifically go through it in detail what those 5 ways are. So I'm not going to cover those today. So head on over to the podcast for that. But I want to talk about this thing of what you can afford versus what you deserve. So this is something that comes up always, always, always when I talk to people about financial freedom. They always bring up this thing about what they deserve. So they say, oh, I deserve a new bag. I deserve some new shoes. I deserve a vacation. The I deserve a vacation one is like the biggest one. I deserve a vacation because people feel like they work hard. And so because they work hard, they deserve a vacation. And to say you deserve a vacation, to say you deserve anything, is a sense of entitlement, right? You deserve it. You should have it regardless of the circumstance and situation. You deserve it. And when it comes to money, finances, and the way we will operate here on the financial emancipation front, on the front of getting free, you do not deserve anything that you cannot afford. And so that's an important distinction about what you deserve. Because if you cannot afford to take a vacation, a specific vacation, you don't deserve it. Now, a vacation meaning time away from work, you should take that as you are entitled to it from your job. But that does not mean that when you take those days off, you then are entitled to get on a plane and go on a vacation, one for which you haven't planned for, budgeted for, and you cannot afford. Now, we get into what does it mean to afford. Some people are like, oh, if I can afford it as long as I have the available credit or I have an ability to get it, right? I can borrow, beg, steal, whatever. No. The word afford, simply by the Webster's Dictionary, just basically goes down to being able to do something without any negative impact of it. So if you can afford to go on a vacation, means you can pay for the vacation and still pay all of your bills. You can pay your rent. You can pay all of your bills. You're not going to get behind on anything. You're going to be able to pay your credit card. You're going to be able to contribute to your savings, contribute properly to your retirement. You're going to be able to do all of that and go on vacation. Well, then you can afford vacation. But if, in order to go on vacation, you have to not pay your rent, then you can't afford vacation. And that seems like a drastic thing, but trust me, people are doing that. If in order to go on vacation, you need to float your bills, like, okay, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna make sure, okay, they won't cut off my cable until I'm 2 months behind, so I won't pay that, and I'm gonna make sure I'm gonna get a payment plan with the cell phone company, and the lights they won't cut off, so I won't pay that, and that's how I'm gonna get my spending money together for my trip. You can't afford to go. If you have to ask someone else, say, okay, can you put this on your credit card for me, and I'll pay for it later, and you can't afford to go. If you're going to charge the whole thing to your credit card, and you don't have any way in which to pay it all off, and you're just like going to do it and say, YOLO, you're going to do it, you can't afford it. Whenever you want to do something that is financial, that is not just your general paying of your bills, you need to carve out money for it. So if you want to go on vacation, you need to save money for it. If you want to buy a luxury item or something that's more expensive, you need to save up for it. You need to plan for it, and you need to budget for it. You do not need to take your money and shift it around in ways in which you're playing like roulette with your money in order to do something, because when you have to do all that, you can't afford it. And I get into this with people all the time because you do not deserve anything that you cannot afford. So a vacation to the Maldives may seem lovely, but it's going to cost you like $4,000. If you don't have the $4,000, you haven't been saving up for it, you haven't been on a payment plan, you haven't done all these things, you don't deserve that vacation. And it's really hard for people to hear that they don't deserve something, because that sounds personal. That sounds very emotional. You don't deserve it. But the facts are, you don't deserve what you can't afford. And it's hard to hear it, but it's the truth. And if you want to do something, if you want to have something, if there's something a financial goal that you have, you need to work towards it. You need to save towards it. You need to plan towards it, and you need to budget for it. But going on a whim, or just doing things and floating money and playing a game with your money in order to be able to afford, to quote unquote afford something, is detrimental, because here's the consequence part. So you may do all of that. And you know what? Some people are really confident in their ability to play the game. And many people feel like, you know what? I've done it all these times. I've floated this, passed this, moved this around, played a little game, called this company, did and they was able to do what I wanted to do. But every time you juggle that many balls in the air, eventually you will drop one. And when you drop one, while you're reaching down to pick up the other one, the one that fell, another one will drop. And then all of a sudden the balls are all dropping, and you're calling someone, asking to borrow something from someone, because you haven't really, you thought you had the game on lock, and you don't. We've all been there. But juggling with your money, juggling with your bills, not paying this to do that, but you know what they say, robbing Peter to pay Paul. It's all a game you don't have to play if you choose to live within your means and choose to exercise some discipline as it relates to things that you want that go outside of your budget. Because then what you need to do is create them, carve them into your budget, and then make the space for it, be diligent about it, plan for it so that you can afford it. You know, it's not easy to tell somebody that, right? It's not easy to say, you can't afford this. But more and more people should hear that they can't afford things. More and more people should be told, no, you cannot afford this. Because if more people were told, and I don't even just mean in a personal level, if more banks would tell people, no, you cannot afford this house, less people would be struggling to pay a mortgage that they cannot afford, and less people would be on a brink of foreclosure if a bank would be honest with you and tell you you can't afford it. More people would be driving a car they actually can afford rather than a car that they want if the banks would just tell you, no, you can't afford this. So we're not going to give you this car loan because you can't afford it. Not that we're going to give you this car loan you can't afford, charge you 24% interest because we know you can't afford it and we know that you're not going to ever be able to pay it. So we're going to charge you 24% interest and penalize you for the fact that we know you're not good with your bills and stuff, you have bad credit, etc. That is where banks and all that stuff are just very evil in that way. More people should tell you no. More people should tell you what you can and cannot afford, because that way maybe more of us in this country, in this world, would be focused on living within our means. Too many of us, and now when I say us, I mean people of color, I mean black people. Too many of us are searching for and reaching for what we consider to be a good life. So we want to have things and demonstrate these things and show these things to others so that we can prove that we have ascended to something. But there's no real win in that when you're living a life you cannot afford. So if you are out here with a car where you have a $700-800 car note and you're struggling to pay it along with your $2,000 and $3,000 rent that you can't afford, and you're barely making it, and when you're living in this apartment you can't afford, paying this rent you can't afford, with the car you can't afford, you barely have enough money to put gas in it. Where does that work out? And who are you trying to impress? Because at the end of the day, you can't afford it. And so there's nothing there. There's no win there. It's a short-term satisfaction. It's impulse. It's all those things, but there's no long-term win there. Anything that you want, you can have if you're willing to plan for it and be disciplined about your finances and make other sacrifices. Because as I always tell people, if you listen to the podcast, I say, you will make the sacrifice. The question is whether or not you will choose the sacrifice you make, or you will allow the universe to make the sacrifice for you. But when it comes to money, there is no way around it. You will make the sacrifice. You spend money you don't have, eventually you will have to pay for it. How one way or the next. It doesn't ever just go away. You will have to pay. So you will have to make the sacrifice. So if you go on a trip you can't afford, eventually you will make the sacrifice you should have made before you went. You will make it afterwards. And it may come in a form you really don't appreciate. Like the day your car breaks down, you need your car to go to work, but you have no money to get it fixed. You can't go to work. Then you lose your job and blah, blah. See, that's the sacrifice you don't want to have to make. So be disciplined. Make the sacrifice in advance. Choose the things you can afford to do and don't do the things you can't afford to do. Because you do not deserve anything that you can't afford. So thanks for listening to me. And check me out on the rest of my videos here on the YouTube channel. Thanks.